Mr. Henson. On this video, we're going to be comparing fractions. This can be kind of a harder concept, but luckily we've already done it in class. We went over it for about a week or two, so this is just kind of review for everyone. This video might end up being a little bit long, but it is completely worth it if you pay attention because all the problems I use on this PowerPoint are from USA Test Prep assignments this week. So if you pay attention, you kind of already have a head start on at least 6 of the problems that you'll see this week. And last, I apologize for my handwriting on this video. It is hard to write with a mouse. I don't have an iPad, so I'm having to write with a mouse, and I'm not as tech savvy as Miss Witten. So I'm kind of learning as I'm going, so just, be patient with me, and I appreciate you watching this video. So I'm going to go ahead and go down number 1. I hope I'm not going to go too fast for you. I'm just going to try to go over this kind of quickly because it is just review for you. So number 1, which fraction is greater than 1/2? So what I'm trying to do is figure out which fraction is larger than 1/2. In order for a fraction to be larger, then that means it would need to be closer to a whole. Remember, a whole would be like 1/1, 2/2, 3/3, 4/4, 5/5, so on and so forth. So, excuse me, 1/2 is 1/2. In order to make this a whole, I would need to make it 2/2. Well, what I would have to do to make this 2/2 is add 1 to the numerator, because 1 plus 1 equals 2, and then that would be 2/2. So I would have to add 1 to this numerator. Now, I can use that knowledge as kind of a cheating strategy to eliminate some answers down here. So I know I'm 1 away from being a whole here. 1/10, 1/10. I know that I would have to add 9 to the numerator to make it a whole, to make it 10/10. So 1/10 is actually farther away from a whole than 1/2. So 1/10 is not greater than 1/2. So I can eliminate it. B says 1/4. So I know that I would have to add 3 to the numerator to get 4/4, which is a whole. Over here, I only have to add 1 to get to a whole. So that means that this is actually farther away from a whole than 1/2. So B can be eliminated. C says 2/4. 2/4, I would need to add 2 to the numerator to get a whole. Up here at 1/2, I only need to add 1 to make it a whole. So that means C is farther away from being a whole than 1/2. So it is not greater than 1/2. Now, here's where my cheating strategy kind of has to end, because I've got one answer here and it's 3/4. I would only have to add 1 to this numerator to make it 4/4, which is a whole. So I'm kind of stuck here because I can see I have to add 1 here and add 1 here. So what I can do is just draw these boxes. So this is one way of solving it. I'll show you another way in just a moment, but this is one way. This is something that I know for a fact that my class did when we were learning the strategy, and I'm pretty sure the others did too. So hopefully this is nothing new to you. But I draw a box here, and I label this part 1/2, and I label this part down here 3/4. So I divide this top part into 2 parts because the denominator is 2. So here's 1 part, here's 1 part, so 2 parts. 3/4, I would need to break it into 4 parts because the 4 is in the denominator. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So as you can see, I've got it kind of split up here. This is useful for comparing fractions because now I just need to shade in. Here I need to shade in 1. Here I need to shade in 3. 1, 2, 3. So here I've actually done that for you, and I kind of went ahead and did it just so I could kind of skip ahead and make the video a little bit shorter. But as you can see, I've got my shading here. So what I want to do to find the greater fraction is look for the fraction that has the most shading. And that is going to be 3/4. As you can see, there's more shading here than up here. So 3/4 is greater than 1/2. Now, another way you could do it is thinking, okay, 1/2, the denominator is 2, down here the denominator is 4, the denominator here is larger, so I know that if I'm only 1 away from being a whole here and the denominator is larger than 2, then this is going to be the greater fraction. Let's go to number 2. Which fraction comparison is true when comparing the colored pieces of each fraction? So this time I'm given pictures, which is great because it makes it easier because now I don't have to draw the boxes. But what I did do was go ahead and label my fractions numerically next to the pictures. So I went ahead and did that, and again, I apologize for the handwriting, but I've got 2/4 here is greater than 2/6. 2/8 is greater than 2/6. 2/8 is greater than 2/4, and 2/9 is greater than 2/6. Well, what I can do is just, one, look at the shading. Here, there is about the same amount shaded as here, so I can't really cross that one off yet. But what I can do is look over here, the numbers. This is why it was important for me to write the fractions out. 2/4 is 2 away from a whole. 2/6 is 4 away from a whole. So this fraction, 2/4, is greater than 2/6 because it is closer to a whole. So that can be one of my answers because that is true. 2/4 is greater than 2/6. 2/8 is greater than 2/6. If I look at my shading, I can tell that there is less shading here than over here. So I already know that this is not going to be true. 2/8 is not going to be greater than 2/6 because there's less shading here. But I also could just look at the numbers. 2/8 is 6 away from being a whole. 2/6 is 4 away from being a whole. So this fraction, 2/6, is closer. So 2/8 is greater than 2/6 is not true. C, 2/8 is greater than 2/4. This one's actually really easy. I can just look at the shading. There's nowhere near as much shading here as there is here, so I know this is not going to be true. And then D, same thing. There's nowhere near as much shading here as there is here. It's important just to look at the shading. There's only a little bit shaded here, and there's a lot shaded here, or a lot more shaded here. So I know that D is not going to be true. 2/9 is not greater than 2/6. So that means A is my answer. Sorry, my voice is getting croaky. I haven't talked this much since we've been in school. So get some water, and we'll move on to number 3. Number 3, which statement comparing fractions is true? So down here, I kind of wrote a note. Remember, the greater, which is the larger fraction, is the fraction that is closest to a whole. So here, my denominators are all different. Here I've got a denominator of 10, I've got a denominator of 5. Here I've got 1 of 9, 1 of 7, 1 is 8, 1 is 7, and then 1 is 8, 1 is 10. So my denominators are all different, but my numerators are all the same. So this makes it really easy because if my numerators are the same, all I have to do is look for the denominator. And the one with the smaller denominator is going to be the larger fraction. It's kind of backwards, but the smaller denominator is going to be the larger fraction when your numerators are the same. That is important to know. And one way you can kind of think like that is 3/10 is 7 away from being a whole. 3/5 is 2 away from being a whole. So 3/10 is less than 3/5 because 3/10 is farther away from being a whole than 3/5. I'm going to pull up my little drawing marker here. Just give me one moment. Here we go. So this can be one of my answers. B, 4/9 is greater than 4/7. So my denominators are different, but my numerators are the same. So I'm going to look for the smaller denominator. That's going to be the larger fraction. Well, this one has 9 up here and 7 back here. This is saying that 4/9 is greater than 4/7. Well, that's not true because 4/9 is 5 away from being a whole. 4/7 is 3 away from being a whole. So 4/7 is actually the greater fraction. So B can be eliminated. C says 5/8 is greater than 5/7. Again, my denominators are different, but my numerators are the same, so I'm going to look for the smaller denominator to be the greater fraction. 5/8 is 3 away from being a whole. 5/7 is 2 away from being a whole. So that means this is not true. 5/8 is not greater than 5/7. 5/8 is less than 5/7. And it is important that you know those signs, the less than, greater than signs. We went over that so many times, and you've been going over that for the past few years in school. So you got to make sure that you remember that and don't get them backwards, because it will throw you off a lot, obviously. So D, 6/8 is less than 6/10. The denominators are different, but the numerators are the same. So I'm going to look for the smaller denominator to be the greater fraction. 6/8 is 2 away from being a whole. 6/10 is 4 away from being a whole. So 6/8 is actually closer. So that means it is not true. 6/8 is not less than 6/10. So that leaves me with A being my correct answer. Number 4. Which statement is true? Well, at this point, this one is really easy. I actually don't need to draw anything out, because we actually are given these really useful tiles, and we use these in school. We had these manipulatives in school, so hopefully these are, familiar to you. So A says 1/2 equals 7/8. B says 1/2 is equal to 4/8. C is 1/2 is equal to 1/8, and D says 1/2 is equal to 5/8. So what I'm going to do is look up here my 1/2 piece. There's a half right here, so I'm going to count how many 1/8 does it take to make a half. So there's 1 1/8, 2 1/8, 3 1/8, 4 1/8, and it ends right here, the same place where 1/2 ends. So 4/8 is equivalent or equal to 1/2. So that means B is going to be my answer. So that one's pretty simple. We are almost done, I promise. Number 5, Kelly and Scott are each reading a book. If Kelly has read 1/4 of her book and Scott has read 1/5 of his book, which one has read more pages in their book? So this one is, the numerators are the same, but the denominators are different. So we need to think back to, we're looking for the smaller denominator. When the numerators are the same, the denominators are what we're looking at. And the smaller denominator is going to be the greater fraction. So, excuse me. So 1/4 has a denominator of 4. 1/5 has a denominator of 5. So which one is smaller? 1/4 has the smaller denominator. So that means it is going to be the greater fraction. 1/4 is 3 away from being a whole. 1/5 is 4 away from being a whole. So I kind of drew a picture here just to show you. Ignore my crooked lines here, but 1/4, there's 1/4 shaded in. That's a visual for you. Here's 1/5. So which one has more shading? 1/4. So who read more pages in their book? Kelly has, because 1/4 is larger than 1/5. So once you get used to doing this, it's really not that hard. It just takes some practice and getting to know these ways just to look at the numbers and be able to quickly get it. Yep, sorry. I think I mixed up. Here we are. All right. Number 6. Which number is equal to 7/1? So this is the last problem I have on today's video. And this one is, might be one that Miss Witten goes over too in her video. I'm not sure. But which number is equal to 7/1? Guys, whenever you have a numerator on top of 1, the answer is going to be the numerator. So like 1/1 is going to be 1. 2/1 is going to be 2. 3/1 is going to be 3. It's just like dividing. So like 7/1 is just like 7 divided by 1. Well, what's 7 divided by 1? It's 7. So 1/1 is 1. 2/2 is 2. 3/3 is 3. No, sorry. I mixed up. 3/1 is 3. 4/1 is 4. 5/1 is 5. 6/1 is 6. 7/1 is 7. 8/1 is 8. And so on and so forth. So when you see these, just know that you just look at the numerator. If the denominator is 1, just look at the numerator. It's just like doing 7 divided by 1. That is the last problem that I picked from USA Test Prep. As you can see, it is 10:30. So I think I'm going to go to bed. I hope this video was useful for you. If you have any questions, please let us know.